Alright, we're starting in 3, 2, 1,
Research and
go.
development mode.
Welcome back. This is Regdrin, and next to me is R90.
Hello!
And we're going to talk about the handful of honor that we're going to spend in Gratuitous Space Battles 2. I personally find everything related to ECM to be of extreme importance at the start of the game. Well, I should say at the start of the unlock decisions. ECM Beam, the first reliable anti-missile system you get. ECM Shock Beam, very useful for paralyzing. And of course ECM Shielding, so that your Dreadnought isn't kept inactive for the entire battle.
Yeah, even I use ECM stuff.
And I can only afford one support beam, so I'm going for shield support. But I also find that very important because you pretty much don't have a full class of ship ready without that. Go on.
Yeah, destroyers are basically entirely about support, and they're the only ones that can equip support beams.
I also got the particle accelerator so that I have a better reason to use dreadnoughts.
There's always a reason to use dreadnoughts.
Maybe, but for heavily armored enemy dreadnoughts, you can't really beat the particle accelerator.
Oh, okay.
So let's move on and see how I assign new things in my ship
Starship
design.
mode activated.
Okay, line them up.
I'd like to talk a bit
Starship
about the
design
ship
mode
design. I spent time off camera putting these things together. How would you like to go about it? Just any old order?
Yeah, whatever. It's your fleet.
Okay, so let's talk about the anti-fighter things I put together. This one has 3 flak and 1 tractor beam, my philosophy being you only need to grab one thing when you're dealing AoE damage.
Yep.
And I have the best targeting array that I could put together. The Terran actually have a pretty nice one for destroyers.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's pretty important for these things to survive, since fighters like to go for this sort of thing, I put a couple of armor plates and a shield on it.
Okay.
The speed is... ugh, but...
They don't need to be fast.
yeah, usually the enemy comes to them.
In great numbers.
Yeah. Also, I have this beauty, which has only one difference to it.
Yep.
I plan to alternate these with the tractor beam ones, or maybe even that isn't necessary if they're guarding cruisers that also have tractor beams, which I do sometimes. What do you want to see next?
So, what else do you have? Do you have a frigate?
I have a frigate, yes.
Oh, never mind then.
No, we might as well get it done. I haven't deleted the designs of the other races yet, but I'll do that once I unlock them. These are all designed using what was available. So, this is the only frigate that I put together that has had any positive effect on battle. You can pretty easily tell what it's for.
Taking down fighters.
Yes, exactly. That's what heavy plasma launchers are for. They are supposed to sit behind cruisers, preferably beam cruisers, since they have a shorter range, and just shoot things with plasma cannons. They work really well against shields, less well against armor, but not bad at all against hull. I considered putting missiles on them, but they seem pretty much objectively worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because while heavy plasma launchers aren't the most accurate, we are talking broadside of barn territory here. And because of this, one engine is fine, 30 speed is plenty to keep up with cruisers. Especially my cruisers.
Oh yeah, cruisers will never be fast.
Next up is... well, since we just talked about cruiser, we might as well bring some of those up. This is the frontliner. And you can tell because it has only 3 weapons, and the rest is utility or defenses. I figured 3 armor plates would be enough, an average armor of 20. I believe that, yes, it puts it just out of range of pulse cannon armor piercing. Until they hit with one lucky shot anyway.
Yep.
I would have liked to have more shields than just a heavy shield and a capacitor, but I couldn't find room for it. And we have a mostly backwards facing tractor beam because, well, why not? I would have liked to put a triple on there, but I don't have that unlocked yet.
Actually, your cruisers are faster than the destroyers that are supposed to be escorting them.
You don't even know how fast my destroyers are yet. Also, I like to have every cruiser with ECM capability.
Uh-huh.
Because it's just insanely useful, that's why.
Mm-hmm. I prefer missiles.
Well, yeah, but this one is going to be close range anyway, and the shock beam doesn't really miss. 3 heavy beam lasers should be enough to remove enemy armor, and that's really all the weapons it's got. It's pretty much just supposed to move up and grab enemy attention, and hopefully it'll do that. So,
Operation Human Shield.
Yes. Well, yeah, I don't think I can argue with that. Although the Dreadnought also does that. Let's move on to the other cruisers first. So this one, well, you can pretty much tell what it's for just by looking at it. This is not the close range one. It's just got...
Torpedoes.
Yeah, all torpedoes. I would have liked to use other kinds of missiles as well, but I don't have those. Torpedoes will do fine. This is the fire lots of torpedoes and hope they don't have missile defenses build.
Well, sometimes they will, so have fun with that.
Yeah, but I found that in the single-player missions, they don't really have too much of that. ECM missiles, because those are great. Target booster, because these do not have a very short fire interval. Well, actually, they're good just about any time. I would have used a better one if I had it. And I think that's all I have to say about it. Their maximum speed is horrible, but they're supposed to hang back anyway, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I also used the cheaper model of cruiser for this, because I don't need any special boosts or a huge amount of slots here. In fact, I left 2 of them empty just to cut down on cost.
But what about the military-industrial complex? What about its feelings?
Oh, don't worry. I'll be keeping them happy with some of my other designs.
So what else you got?
Well, the final cruiser that I've got is this one, because some missions have lots of frigates on some portion of the battle or other, and this one will be designed to hunt them down with pulse lasers and pulse cannons. I was surprised that pulse lasers had much better armor damage than the cannons, but I'm pretty happy about that. It gives a better reason to bring both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, do you have any feelings about pulse cannons?
There's no reason not to use them, and that's probably a bad thing.
Yeah.
I always have at least 2 pulse cannons on my bigger ships.
So, tell me, was there any weapon like that in Gratuitous Space Battles 1?
I'm thinking about that. However, for a while in GSB 1, missiles were super powerful.
Okay, well, I guess that's fair.
They've even been detuned recently in this game.
Well, because I have so much space dedicated to attacking and aiming, because sometimes frigates move, the defenses are, well, less than my other frontliner, even though this particular ship moves forward a bit. I guess I'm not entirely sure how well this thing will survive. We'll find out pretty soon, I think. But I have 2 good engines, because this one will have to chase things down every now and then. And that's just about it. So let's move on.
Okay, so what's next on the list?
Might as well bring up the destroyers since you mentioned those before.
Yeah.
Well,
we already mentioned a couple of destroyers.
yeah, might as well complete it, I guess.
Yeah, destroyers are one of the new classes in Gratuitous Space Battles 2. They exist pretty much entirely as support ships, dealing with fighters and boosting the capabilities of other
Their
ships.
utility. And
Yeah.
this one is all utility. The only thing it does is disrupt enemy missiles. And I find it a little disturbing that there's no anti-missile technology unlocked by default. So, I don't know. It seemed pretty important to me. And this one, I don't expect it to come under much direct fire since it doesn't attack anything, but I put a bit of armor and a light shield on it just in case. And one engine is enough to keep it moving at a decent speed. However, anti-missile equipment is surprisingly expensive. I'd say 2 or 3 of these will equal the expense of a cruiser, so they'd better prevent a lot of damage. I'm expecting a lot of missiles, they'd better not disappoint.
Oh, don't worry, you're gonna get missiles.
Okay, fine. And the final destroyer I have unlocked is, I believe I call it the budget support, and if you take a look at the cost and the layout, you'll see why.
Oh my!
I'm using only shield support beams because that's all I've got. I kind of like the recon support beams because you'd be surprised how often ships miss even against really big stuff. This should be fine for now, though. I'd like to say that I might go a bit light on these because shields get broken pretty fast in the first battle, but I'll still throw a few out there. You can't beat the price, and since they don't fire, they will get fired upon very rarely. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, one of the things the designer did for Gratuitous Space Battles 1 as well was give enemy ships threat priority, because what people thought would be a good idea was to build completely brick cruisers and send them in ahead to so-called the fire while the actual damage-dealing ships trailed behind, but the designer was a bit too smart for that.
Yeah. Although I will say that the full or mostly full tank cruisers are still used. They have a purpose. They just don't completely dominate the game anymore. Or did they ever? I'm not sure.
Not really, thanks to the whole lucky shot thing.
Yeah. And how do you design your support destroyers?
I don't.
You don't like them.
Well, it's not that I don't like them, I've just never felt the need to use them.
Well, I'm hoping I can prove you wrong here. Don't you feel great about that?
Well, you'll have to beat my high scores first.
Oh, I see how it is. Well, let's move on. We've gone over most of the things, actually.
Dreadnought?
Oh yeah, how could I forget the Dreadnought? I think that's the last thing, in fact.
Yeah, Dreadnoughts are another of the new ship classes. However, they started life in Gratuitous Space Battles 1 as a fairly popular mod.
Okay. I actually hadn't heard about that, probably because I don't play Gratuitous Space Battles 1 much. So this one is not exactly bristling with weapons. Some of the weapon slots, or one of them anyway, is taken by other equipment.
3 of them are taken by other equipment.
Oh yeah, repairs. I don't like to use all of the weapon slots because, personally, I prefer ships that can focus all of their weapons on one thing. And many of the Dreadnought's weapon arcs are not friendly to that. I have 6 armor plates, which it's not the craziest thing I've seen by far, but it should be enough for this, and I have 2 full shield arrays and 1 medium. I don't use the capacitor because once you go past 2, they're just not worth it, in my experience.
Why is it so fast?
Probably because I put 4 engines on it.
Why'd you do that?
So that it can reach the battle in time. I mean, if they're going to tank at all, they need to be able to reach the front line before all my cruisers die. So, dreadnoughts usually have to be able to handle anything, because, well, you can't have a dedicated anti-shield thing that hangs back, which sort of defeats the purpose of a dreadnought. However, if it's only anti-armor, you don't want its firepower to be wasted. That's my experience.
Yeah, another thing is that dreadnoughts do not really have any worthwhile anti-fighter equipment, unlike pretty much any other ship in the game. However, that's less of an issue in Gratuitous Space Battle 2, because fighters can no longer get inside shield bubbles.
Yeah. That's one of the less popular changes, as far as I can tell. But as I mentioned before, I have 2 armor repair arrays, so that'll hopefully keep the weapons bouncing off for a while. And with 3 shield generators, the shield should last a decent amount of time, especially with a couple of shield boosting support things behind it. So I think this one will be able to do its job reasonably well. What do you think?
I think so.
Alright. Well, I guess we're about to find out. And that's it.
You're still recording.
Yeah, I know. I skipped through the assembling the formation part, mostly, but you can take a look at my plan. There's about 9 cruisers worth of fighters and gunboats over here, so I doubt they're going to have the same impact that 9 cruisers would, but just in case, I have set up some flak in a position that I hope will draw their attention right at the start. They do seem to like to attack frigates and destroyers, so I'm pretty sure it'll work out. Do you have any comments so far?
I tend not to put those things in front of my heavies.
Okay, why not?
In my experience, it invites disaster.
What kind of disaster?
Well, you run out of screens due to enemy fire, and the fighters get to do whatever they want.
Okay, well, I guess we'll see if that happens. Also, this is what I consider my idealist, which is I'd really love for these frigates to be useful, so I'm going to try using them here. They're going to be beside and a bit behind my frontline cruisers, so that they can contribute without being immediately targeted.
Keep in mind that my destroyer assessment mainly comes from the fact that I've been playing on Expert for a while.
Mm-hmm. You're the expert, are you?
Not always.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm hoping that 1 dreadnought will be enough for this, because I have a certain objection to just loading up my fleet with dreadnoughts. You know how I sort of made fun of the designer for playing how he wants the game to work instead of how it actually does work? I might be a bit guilty of that here.
Well, to be honest, having too many dreadnoughts can be a bit of a problem, because dreadnoughts are not mainly about firepower, they're mainly about keeping on shooting where other ships would have been destroyed. They're about staying power, not gunpowder for the most part.
Yeah, on the other hand, when you're going for a high score and thus fighting with a small fleet, staying power is incredibly important. Which is one of the reasons I have trouble using frigates in this kind of puzzle.
Well, the problem with GSB2 is that frigates aren't nearly as mean as they used to be.
I do miss the frigate EMP missiles.
Well, I mean, even in general.
Oh?
Because in Gratuitous Space Battles 1, frigates could carry weapons that could actually put the hurt on cruiser shields, like the frigate ion cannon.
Yeah. Well, the frigate plasma launchers do an okay job at it. Now, if you were going to field 8 or 9 cruisers worth of stuff, you'd hope that they could at least kill, a couple of frigates, right?
That would be the idea, yes.
What I'm going to try to demonstrate here is the problem with the stick together command.
Oh yeah, this is exactly what flak shooting was made for.
Mm-hmm. So when does the disaster happen?
It tends to happen when fighters are armed with missiles and not, beam lasers.
So not like these.
No, these guys are toast.
Aside from the ship design, another advantage you usually have over your opponent in single-player mission is with the orders. For example, you should usually not have your frigates rush in far ahead of everything else. And I say this having designed much faster frigates than those. I tried assigning a few to keep moving, and they had enough engines to approach gunship speed, which worked until they sort of overshot their ideal fighting distance and started running into the, how shall I say, enemy collision box, and that stopped them right there. I wish they turned earlier so that they could keep moving like you wanted them to. What was your experience?
Well, I tended not to use frigates that much anyway, which probably says everything.
Oh, is that different from what you did in Gratuitous Space Battles 1?
Oh yeah, I tended to assign a pair to each cruiser if I really wanted to hurt guys.
Mm-hmm. Which, being Gratuitous Space Battles, I assume you always do.
Of course.
Alright. Now, I noticed a few things with enemy design in this particular mission. First of all, they don't seem to have any anti-missile defense. Secondly, they don't seem to use any EMP. These are pretty useful things, I think.
Oh yeah, very much in general. The big thing that really swamps people on this first mission is that the enemy ships tend to have really strong shields and are built pretty much specifically to destroy the sample cruisers the game gives you right at the start.
I never used the sample cruisers, so that's pretty interesting. But I have to argue with you about the really strong shields because, well, first of all, the anomaly means that they're 50% strength.
Yes, but not at 50% resistance.
Okay, well, right. That brings up something that I find interesting.
Later, everyone. R90.
You use cruisers or dreadnoughts. Have you ever used a shield that's not heavy?
Well, when I use shields at all, no.
Ah. I don't always use shields, but when I do, I use heavy shields.
Fight responsibly, my friends.
Now, what would you say is the biggest problem with this fleet, or did I already go over that? I mean the enemy fleet.
Oh, I think you got it just fine.
Okay.
Another thing I noticed is that even though they're using the what the game calls the Yamamoto class dreadnought, they don't seem designed to take advantage of their huge armor boost.
Oh yeah, I never did notice any... Go away, tutorial! As I was saying, I didn't seem to notice any weapons bouncing off their armor. But thanks to the enemy not particularly being overwhelming, my frigates actually survived, which is... Well, that surprised me, I'll put it that way.
Well, there's a bit of leeway when it comes to playing on normal.
Mm-hmm. When you played this mission, what was your design? How did you approach it?
Well, after I lost the first time,
Yeah?
I tended to load up on things like plasma and missile launchers, things which could break the shield resistance of enemy ships pretty easily, and after that it wasn't really a problem.
Yeah. I think that applies to almost every battle. Every battle that allows shields at all.
When I was going for my high score run, I went right back to my full armor designs and built on pulse cannons and beam lasers for the rest, so I could knock down the shields quickly and then just tear through the hulls.
So by full armor, you mean
no shields?
Because at half strength you didn't want to bother with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, I really wanted to take advantage of the giant armor boost that the Yamamoto had.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, these ships aren't really equipped for the kind of heavy armor busting that would be a threat to that design.
Yeah. Also, I appreciate that they don't start you off with a tiny battle like a lot of games of this type might.
Yeah, those are what the game calls tutorial battles.
Now, I want to point out just how much the opposing side spent on fighters by showing how much hull damage was done by the flak.
Which is to say, if you're paying attention, more damage than any other weapon.
Yeah. Although there was sort of a mix of things hitting the hulls of the bigger ships, so maybe it's exaggerated a little.
Flak cannons have a very short range.
Research and development mode.
Okay, so that was a big chunk of honor. We'll go over how that's spent in the next one.
Uh-huh.